this has been coming up in many of the conversations I've been having with friends, family, colleagues. And it's like, okay, what are those times when we feel just out of the flow, out of the rhythm of prosperity? Say the money isn't coming like it used to, or the bills are adding up, or the creativity isn't flowing, it just feels like, uh, yeah, maybe it's just like you're just grinding through and just things aren't clicking. In like, say, a baseball term, it's just like a slump. You're going up to bat, you're swinging with everything you can, and you're trying to put the bat on the baseball, but it's just not clicking. You're just not getting on base. And so, how that can be a pretty tough spiral of, uh, maybe anxiety starts pulling up more, maybe fear, more pressure. And with each that pressure creates constriction and tightness in our body. And then it creates constriction and tightness in our mind. So we don't do the things that we normally do. And like the baseball analogy, you know, sports players are at their best when they're loose, when they're flowing. And the more tighter they get, the worse they do. So how does that apply to our work? How do we go to the other side and get into the rhythm of prosperity where we feel in the flow, where it's instinctive, where we're not overthinking things, where we're not trying to push things, and there's a flow. And let's say there's an effort, but on the red side it's just like so much effort for like no gains. On the green side, you do an effort. If there's a sense of ease with it, and you're giving yourself to it, but it's like you're just flowing down the river. So what I noticed is, you can let me know in the comments too, of where do you feel like things are currently at, for you? Is it on the red side? Is it on the green side? Is it maybe in the middle? In terms of feeling in the flow with life, the opportunities, and we think about health, wealth, and happiness. If there was an overall, like, flow score, where do you feel in the flow? You can choose one of them, or you can do, one for all of them. And because what I'm going to share is something that I've been finding for me, that I'm like, oh, these are like the simple steps for me being in flow. Okay, and as those come in to the comments, yeah, so what I found for myself is that when I was in the red, it like kicks in this pattern of like, I always got to be working and I always got to be like progressing. But the funny thing is that when I'm in that state of mind, that's like the last thing I do. There's a lot of activity, there's a lot of pushing, but again, marginal gains. So, got it. Yep. So you got your life score, and then you got your finance score of where you're feeling the flow. Yep. So, yeah. So it's like, okay, what can I do to make sure that I'm in the flow? And what I realized is I just have a series of questions. Number one, have I filled up my cup? Because if I'm giving from an empty cup, I'm being depleted. And I know for me, when I have an empty cup, I get grumpy. I get grumpy, and it's just, little things go a long way, I feel like, because so maybe I'm not as generous as I usually am, or I like to be, or I'm just not as like chipper, just not as like bright and shiny as I usually am or like to be. It's just kind of like a dim energy of just seriousness. So have I filled up my cup? That's my thing. And how I fill up my cup really to me is like, there's a few different things, but like for one of them is like my mornings, to have my mornings that are flexible and they're not go right into execution. It's flexible, it's creative, it's whatever I want to read, whatever I want to, watch, or whatever it is, or go, and to have that time for myself fills up my cup. And when I do that, then I'm better for everybody around me. And coincidentally, I get access to better ideas, because as our cup is filled up more, we get access to better ideas. Our frequency raises. And so then it's like, all right, fill up my cup. What do I want to create? What are those like little whispers that I hear of, like, oh, wouldn't this be cool? Or, oh, it would be nice to have a diagram for this. Or wonder if what this would look like in a spreadsheet. And so what I've noticed is that when I'm feeling prosperous and I have time and I'm like, has a nice balance, this is what I give myself time to create. And then it creates more prosperity. And time again, I've seen where those little creations that just started off as a whisper or a whim, they don't make sense at first, but then all of a sudden they snowball or they click later on into something that's profound and impactful, and it's powerful. But what I find when I'm on the red side of things is I don't give myself time to do that. That gets pushed to the back burner because it's like, well, how's it going to make money? How's it going to move the business forward? All these different things, and I'm depriving the business myself of the very things that end up creating gains for the business. And what I find too, just for myself, like being a projector in human design, is like when I create those things, people just show up that could use them. It's pretty wild. It's just like create it, and then a couple days later, or that day, or a day later, it's just like people are like, oh, it would be really nice to have this. And I'm like, oh, well, here you go. So I share it. So that's like being in flow of this prosperity. And as we know, as we give that energy out, it flows out. But again, on the red side, I didn't even create that. So I didn't have anything to give. So that exchange didn't even happen. That flow didn't even happen. So those are the things, like, okay, I fill the cup up, because then I can create from an overflowing cup. And then also, who do I want to help? Like, who do I get a sense of, say, this week, or this day, that there's a little something. Maybe I share a message with them, or schedule some time with them, or give them a resource, or ask them if they want a resource. There's something where it's just like, okay, who is something to help? And if I haven't filled up my cup in the beginning, then I'm already on empty. I'm just like, oh man, it's trying to drive a car on empty. It's like a person saying, hey, can you pick me up at the airport? And it's like, yeah, my car's on empty. So like I might get a little bit there, but not gonna get fully there. So that's what I noticed. And then and that can change too, those people. And this is where I feel too, is like the universe, higher power, is like moving through us. And as we are open that conduit, of course, more flows to us. So for me, what I've realized is like this is a stacking type progress or process for me. Like one builds upon the other. And then, it's paying attention to, where do I want to give? And it's slightly related to who I want to help, but it could be a little bit different. It could be an organization, or it could just be a cause, or it could just be a team, or whatever. It's just like, where do I feel called to give? And when I say want in this, it's really not a mental thing. It's like, where do I feel, called to give? Maybe that's a better way to do it. Where do I feel called to give? Where do I feel called? Who do I feel called to help? What do I feel called to create? Like, what do I feel is like emerging through me? So that's what has just been a really profound realization for me, is that those are the things that, when things are good, those are things I naturally do, and it brings more prosperity. And those times in my life where for whatever reason, I've just gotten knocked out of that, and I go back to the old patterns, these are the things that go out the window first. And then it's like a spiraling down of like less and less flow, more and more grinding. So with this, I feel like for me, and perhaps you too, it's like this is a simple way to always be in the rhythm of prosperity, and always having what we need when we need it, because we're in the flow. And there's going to be ups and downs in certain flows, but to not have like drastic feast famine cycles like it can be in the grind, side of things on the left-hand side. And then a little sprinkle on top here is a bonus fifth one. And this is just asking, how can I be of the greatest service for humanity? And this is a question that Richard Rudd, the author of the Gene Keys, says, and I like how he worded it there. Before this, I would look at it from like, how do we free 1 billion people? Because that's a mission of true freedom. Like, what's next in that path? And I've been liking this a little bit more lately is like for some reason it kind of connects a different part of me. And so yes, still keep the mission, the vision. And it's like for some reason this I can feel connects of like, yeah, how can I be the greatest service for humanity? And I feel like that's it's almost like a flower that just starts blossoming. It might not be like a direct action insight right immediately, but it's kind of like this flower that's adding, like I said, little sprinkles on top of everything. So let me know how this resonates with you in the comments, and let me know which one you feel like you need most right now. Which one is next up for you right now? Now, let's say if you went in this order. So, number one, are you feeling your cup filled up? If not, then maybe that's the place to start, I would say. And or two, maybe you are feeling that right now, and it's like, okay, maybe step two is to maybe your focal point is, what to create. And let me know in the chat which one would be like, which one you'd like to focus on. Because we're going to do the subconscious release on any resistance holding back being in the rhythm of prosperity, being in the flow of prosperity, any tension, any constriction, anything that's holding us back. So maybe maybe your cup is filled up, and maybe you have been giving yourself time to create. Now it's like, hey, who do you feel called to help? Or maybe you have been doing that. Maybe there's certain people that could just really use a friend, or just use some advice, or just really use someone to listen to them. And maybe you've done that. And maybe right now it's, where do you want to give? Maybe there's larger organizations. So in that order, let me know which number feels like most relevant for you to focus on right now. Is it 1? Is it 2? Is it 3? Is it 4? And as you put that in the chat, yeah, so what we're going to do here is go into the resistance, resistance of filling your cup. Oh, well, everybody else should be served before you should be served. Those limiting beliefs come up, or, maybe just not even having any self-respect for ourselves to even have a cup. Who are we to have a cup to be filled? Okay, and so let me know which one resonates with you, and then we'll move on to the next one. So 1, 2, 3, or 4, let me know in the comments. And let's see, so resistance, limiting beliefs that can come up for who do I want to help? Well, I feel like that's so natural to us when we're not focused, when we don't have to focus on our survival. I truly believe that's just human nature. I truly believe like if our survival is taken care of, like we feel good in ourselves, we have our cup filled up, then it's just natural. And so, but when we don't, it feels like we're already getting everything. Okay, so we're working on 1. Yeah, so we'll focus on then, it'll be individual for each of us, but yeah, filling up your cup, and then also that spilling into what you want to create, taking that time to create, and that natural creative instinct getting ahead of the to-do list rather than at the very end when all of the execution is done.